Have you ever heard of a mother who looked at her newborn baby, and instead of holding it close to her chest, she carried it to the river, lifted it above the water, and let go? But here's the question that has haunted generations. Why would a mother do that? This is not just a story about a cruel act. It's about a village blinded by beauty, poisoned by judgment, and cursed by racism so deep that even a child's first cry was drowned by it. In a forgotten corner of Africa, long before cities and tall buildings, there lived a community that believed a child's worth was measured not by their heart, but by their skin, their features, and the way they looked. If a baby was born different, too dark, too strange, or simply not beautiful enough, they were whispered about, shamed, and sometimes abandoned. And in that very village, one mother gave birth to a child unlike any the people had seen before. His skin was darker than the night, his features sharp and unusual, his cry piercing the air like an unwanted reminder. The villagers laughed. They called him ugly. They said he was a curse. And under that crushing weight, the mother made a choice that would change the destiny of not only her baby, but the entire village. But here's the haunting part. What if the child they rejected was the very one meant to save them all? What if the baby the world mocked held the secret to the village's survival? Stay with me until the end, because once you hear what happened after that baby hit the water, you will never look at the word ugly the same way again. The village of Nkembo sat at the edge of a vast river that cut through the African plains like a silver snake. For generations, the people lived by the rhythm of the water, fishing, washing, and praying beside it. But beneath their songs and dances, the village held a dark truth. They worshipped beauty and despised anything that did not fit their idea of it. In Nkembo, a child's value was judged at birth. Pale skin was praised, symmetry in the AA. Face was admired. Light features were seen as divine blessings. Dark skin, unusual shapes, or birthmarks were whispered about as curses. Mothers prayed for children who looked pleasing to the eye, for they knew that anything less would invite shame. Into this world, a young woman named Abena gave birth. She was known as graceful and fair, admired by many. When word spread that she had gone into labor, the village women gathered eagerly, expecting to welcome a child as beautiful as Abena herself. But when the baby's cry pierced the hut, silence fell. The child was dark, darker than any the villagers had seen. His head was larger than usual, his eyes wide and intense. His limbs seemed frail, and in that silence, the whispers began. Cursed. Ugly. Not of us. Abena held her baby close, but the stares burned into her. Her own family looked away in shame. The midwife muttered that perhaps the gods had punished her. Men who once admired Abena now refused to look at her. In the eyes of the village, she was no longer blessed. She was the mother of an abomination. Abena tried to resist. For days, she nursed her child in secret, hiding his face with cloth. But every time she stepped outside, insults followed. Children pointed. Women clutched their babies tighter. Elders spat on the ground. The rejection cut deeper than any knife. The breaking point came during a village feast. As Abena walked past with her baby, laughter erupted. A man shouted, "Why do you carry death in your arms? Throw it away before it poisons us all." The crowd laughed. And in that moment, something in Abena snapped. She rose before dawn the next morning, walked to the river with her baby wrapped tightly in cloth and with trembling hands. She let him fall into the rushing waters. But the river, unlike the village, did not reject him. It carried him. It cradled him. And it led him to a destiny no one in Nkembo could have imagined. The river swept the baby away, But it did not swallow him. Instead, he floated, carried gently as if the water itself knew this child was different. Downstream, in a dense part of the forest where the villagers rarely went, the baby washed ashore near the hut of an old woman named Nia. Nia was an outcast herself. Her skin was darker than anyone else's in Nkembo. Her hair grew thick and untamed. For years, the villagers had mocked her, calling her the Shadow. She had no husband, no children, only the forest and her knowledge of herbs. But when she found the baby crying on the riverbank, she saw something no one else had: beauty. To Nia, the child's dark skin glistened like polished ebony. His wide eyes burned with fire, and his frail body carried the strength of survival. She named him Kofi, meaning born on Friday, and raised him as her own. Kofi grew under Nia's care, far from the cruelty of the village. He was quiet, observant, and strong in spirit. But what made him extraordinary was not just his survival. It was the strange connection he had with the river. Whenever Kofi sat by the water, it calmed. Fish swam closer, birds gathered, even storms seemed to soften. Nia began to believe that the child abandoned as ugly was blessed by forces greater than the village could comprehend. Years passed. Nkembo, meanwhile, began to suffer. Crops withered. The river, once abundant, shrank during dry seasons. Fish became scarce. Disease spread. Elders performed rituals, blaming curses and angry spirits. But no matter how many offerings they gave, nothing changed. Then one night, a dream spread across the village. Many claimed to see the same vision: a boy with dark skin standing at the river, holding a staff of light. In the dream, he spoke without words. "The river listens to me." Fear and curiosity spread. Who was this boy? Where was he? Elders insisted it was nonsense, but whispers grew louder. And when hunters one day stumbled upon Kofi by the river, older now, tall and proud, guiding fish into nets with nothing but his presence, they knew the vision was real. The hunters ran back, telling the village of the boy with the river's power. And suddenly the same people who mocked dark skin and cursed the ugly were desperate for the one they had abandoned. When Kofi was brought before the villagers, silence fell. Abena, his mother, gasped when she recognized him, the child she had cast away. The elders begged for help, telling him the river no longer blessed them. They offered gifts, apologies, and promises. But Kofi said nothing. His wide eyes, once mocked, now burned with quiet power. He returned to the river, lifted his hands, and the waters rose, clear and strong. Fish leapt. The people fell to their knees, crying with relief. Yet beneath the surface, an unspoken truth lingered. These were the same people who had laughed as he was thrown away, the same people who judged him for his skin. And though they now praised him as a savior, Kofi knew their hearts had not truly changed. The village celebrated, dancing and feasting, declaring Kofi a miracle. But inside he carried scars deeper than any wound. He remembered the whispers, the stares, the laughter. The river had cradled him, but the people had drowned him long before he could swim. One night, as the village gathered for a ritual, Kofi stood before them. His voice was calm, yet heavy like thunder. He asked, "Would you have called me a miracle if my skin were lighter? If my face had pleased your eyes? Or did I become valuable only because you needed me?" The crowd grew uneasy. Elders looked away. Mothers clutched their children. Kofi pressed on. "You worshipped beauty and cursed difference. You spat on the very gift the river gave you. Do you think you deserve its blessings now?" As his words echoed, the river behind him began to churn. Waves rose. Lightning flashed across the sky. Fear gripped the villagers as water spilled into the fields. They begged for mercy, weeping at Kofi's feet. Abena, trembling, stepped forward. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted the truth. She had let him go. She confessed her shame, her weakness, and the cruelty of the village. For the first time, she saw her son not as ugly, but as divine. Kofi looked into her eyes. For a long moment, the storm raged, and then, slowly, the waters calmed. He turned to the river, placed his hand upon it, and whispered words. No one could hear. The storm faded. The river returned to peace. But his message was clear. The curse was never the rivers. It was the hatred in their hearts. From that day forward, Nkembo changed. The villagers no longer judged a child by the color of their skin or the shape of their face. They began to honor difference, seeing beauty in what they once called ugly. Kofi became a symbol of hope, a living reminder that the river does not care about appearances. It listens to the heart. Abena, haunted but grateful, spent the rest of her life beside her son, seeking forgiveness in her actions, though she knew she could never erase what she had done. Her story spread far beyond Nkembo, told from one village to another until it became legend. And so, the tale endured. The baby who was thrown into the river, mocked for his darkness, abandoned for his difference, yet rose to be the savior of those who rejected him. But here's the question I leave you with. How many Kofis has the world thrown away? How many children, judged by their skin, their features, or their differences, have been cast aside before their true gifts could shine? Maybe this story is not just an African folktale. Maybe it's a mirror. Maybe it's asking us all, when we see someone who does not look like us, do we call them ugly? Or do we see the river within them? Because history has shown us again and again, the ones we reject often carry the very blessings we need most.